The recording is still up. There it goes. Okay.
Okay. All right. So let's get to some updates. We're so glad to still see numbers going down in both Indiana and Kentucky. So I'm sure you know that. And so that's really, really good news. And we're also glad to see vaccine numbers going up. We've had a dozen or so of our staff that have currently been volunteering to get the vaccine. Some of you may have seen some of the articles about Walmart was giving priority to teachers in Indiana as well, and then the state stopped that because they are not in the eligibility category. So my own personal opinion is that's really frustrating. There's a lot of teachers that really want to get vaccinated so we can get all the kiddos back in the building. But in our state, that has not been the priority like in other states. So we're still going by that mostly age, and which is also really important. I'm not denying that at all. So, but it is really hard to work a full day and then to volunteer for 4 hours in addition to that. And we've got a lot of staff that have been doing that to feel protected. The schools also purchased some KN95 masks. So I've been wearing that all day. And so any of the staff that want those can be wearing those throughout the rest of the school year. And the state of Indiana also is sending us additional KN95 masks, which is fantastic, and PPE and rapid tests to be used at school. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. I do want to mention that we are considering bringing hybrid kids back on campus on March 8th. And so we will meet again on March, I forgot that date, 3rd as a group to see how things are going and see if that plan is still a go. And so if you want to mark your calendars for potential hybrid start on March 8th. And so we'll see if things keep going the way they are. Of course, we're still right at where we were at the start of the school year. So we have to keep things in perspective. Although the numbers are going down, they were really, really high. So I'm going to give you some perspective about that. So right now, our unique positivity in Floyd County is 11.2%. Our unique positivity in Clark is 13.3%, and Harrison is 20.2%. So all given, those numbers are still high. They're not as high as they were, but they're not great. 7-day total positivity, Floyd is 7.85, so that includes everyone that took a test. It is very difficult to know which is the right way to do that. We've tried to stay consistent with unique, but that is the total positivity, so the total number of people that took a test versus those that were positive. So 7.85 in Floyd, total positivity in Clark is 7.78, and Harrison is 9.63. The weekly new cases for Floyd is 318, and I'm sorry, so that's a 14-day average. We'll talk about why that's important in just a minute. Clark is 344, and Harrison is 398. So for every 100,000 people in a community, that's the 2-week number. So in Floyd, 318 out of 100,000 have been positive. So all 3 of those counties, which is where the bulk of our families come from, are back in yellow, and positivity is trending down. So good news. The CDC and the Indiana State Department of Health have come out with some new information, so I'm going to spend most of this call kind of sharing with you about that. Melissa and Prane and I have been working on an email that we'll also send out with the details of this afternoon. So I think, the first thing that I think we gained from reading the new CDC guidelines is validation. We felt good, validated about the mitigation and the practices that we have in place have been, supported by the CDC. There were a few new things that came out of that. One of them is defining social distancing groupings. And so let's see here, the CDC, again, mentions, and it's just they made it more clear in this last bit of guidelines talking about like whether you want to call them pods or cohorts and not mixing those and trying to keep those numbers specific throughout. And so, which is the reason why we created the plan that we did at the beginning of the year, where kids go out the studio doors and come in the studio doors. We don't have kids mixing throughout the building. So the only place that doesn't happen for us is our before and after school program, extended learning. We could not figure out a way to not mix, and so those families enrolled in extended learning still mix, but otherwise throughout the building, they're just in their small groups, and that's where they stay. They eat lunch in their room, everything stays the same. What we found, and with snow day stuff, is that we could not do that well. Is there was no way not to mix, and so I wish that Eureka moment would have come to us earlier, but it came to us last week. And that made it problematic to bring more kids back on campus earlier. But we decided to, if it wasn't for COVID, that would have not happened. But because of COVID, we took the more conservative route with that as well. The other place they discussed, and this was more of the ISDH's guidelines as well, is that you can move from 6 foot for contact tracing to 3 feet. Meaning that right now, when we've had, like the couple of positive cases on campus, if the younger the kiddos were, the more that we considered more people as positive contacts. And so when you're contact tracing, the rule of thumb per se is 6 feet for more than 15 minutes or around 15 minutes. And so if we weren't sure, of course, we would use the conservative number for that. So the state said you can use 3 feet for contact tracing instead of 6. So many states are trying, I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Many states are trying to find out how to keep more kids on campus for longer periods of time. And so we have looked at that and said, okay, what makes sense and what increases risk? And so one of these components is to move from 6 feet to 3 feet. And that is can only be used if kids are sitting in rows of desks, all facing forward. We do not have a building like that in the building. We do have a class like that in the building. So we cannot move to 3 feet contact tracing because we don't have kids sitting in rows and not talking to each other, work with each other. You're bringing them on campus because you want them to have our experience. And so that's what we're giving you. And so that does mean that we will continue to use 6 feet instead of 3 feet. Another component of that was that you could decrease the amount of quarantining. We have decided to keep the quarantining the same. We're not, just like we've talked about over the last few months, that we're not moving to 10-day quarantine if they've done this test or if they've got this situation. We're keeping everything the same. We don't have to do it a lot. The families that are coming on campus are really following, the procedures, and cross our fingers that will continue. So we are working hard to do that piece. We don't have dozens of kids out quarantining every day. So we're not going to change something that's working. So we're going to continue the 14-day quarantine for close contact, regardless of testing. Because we think that's the way to help all of the community that's here on campus to feel the most supported and the safest. So we won't be making any of those changes. The CDC also provided some new guidelines for community transmission. And so I'll be sharing this too in the email today, but I'm going to share my screen a second so you can see it, and we'll talk about it. Okay, can you see that graph? Okay. So this is a little bit different than the one I shared with you, I think, in January. It's changed just a little bit. And so these are the total new cases. And so as you could tell, I mean, all the in Floyd, Clark, and in Harrison were all above 100 new cases per 100,000. So we're in the high transmission right now in all three of those counties, Floyd, Clark, and Harrison. The percentage of positivity, so New Albany, Floyd, and Clark fall in this range right at the edge of 7. They're almost to 8, so we're pretty close to this number, but they were at 7.8, 7.9, and Harrison County was in this direction, in the high transmission. So, it's just another tool for us to use, which we will be using as we continue to look at, like if these numbers start going the opposite direction in the middle of March, it starts to give us, some point to think about, what's happening. Is there something we can change or do differently, etc. So. Sorry about that. Got overzealous and hung up on you instead of stop sharing my screen. Okay, so I think all that is just good information. Also talked about ventilation as a mitigation strategy, and as I've shared before, we have 2 energy recovery units in the building that flip our air to clean air. I think it's somewhere between 7 and 12 times. I don't remember that number exactly, but it's right around where we would want it to be. Anyway, that's good news. We have a new building where it's a problem is in a lot of really old school buildings that don't have even conditioned spaces in all areas. So we're really fortunate in that. We continue to look at, we have really good filters and we change them regularly, but we continue to look at newer information about filtration in that situation, as well as we change those filters regularly. And then the last piece for that is both the CDC and the ISDH, Indiana Department of Health, Indiana State Department of Health, are encouraging multi-layer masking. So we are asking from this point forward that staff and learners that come on campus to wear multi-layers. 3 layers plus is best. We're saying it has to at least be 2 layers. So if you have a 1-layer gaiter, for example, that will not be acceptable to bring on campus. If you need masks, we can get you masks. We have extra masks here. They're disposable masks. All you need to do is let your teacher know, and they will let us know, and we will get those down to you. So if you need 10 or 20 or whatever you need, just communicate that to your teachers and we'll help you with that. But we are going to ask that all people that come on campus from this point forward to wear multiple layers of masks. The KN95 mask fits into that criteria. The mask I have on is a regular 3-layer that also has a place for a filter. So if you have a 2-layer plus a filter, that's all fine. We're just not going to let 1 layers or come back on the campus. Many of the staff right now, if you walk through the building, if you were here, are wearing double masks. And so if you want to do that, feel free to do that as well. But we do have extra masks, and we do have more masks coming for learners. And so if you need masks, reach out. The teachers have them. We'll get them more if they need more. So we want to make sure everyone's doing that well. I can't tell you how shocked I am every time I go down after we've had a break and I'm observing the building, and kids all have their masks on properly with their noses covered, these little 3- and 4-year-olds even. So kudos to each of you. I know you've been working really hard to practice that with your children and or teens. So please keep it up. We really, really appreciate it. That helps. So that is the one thing that we're changing for on-campus learning, is that wearing at least a 2-layer mask. We encourage you to wear more like a 3, but at least a 2-layer. So this new rapid test, we've had, I think, 4 staff members now that have completed the training. The test is called BINAX, BINAX, and it takes just 15 or so minutes to complete. and we will be using that as soon as we get them. So the purpose for this is if we have a kiddo that we're sending home with symptoms or a staff member that we're sending home with symptoms, we will do a rapid test if we have the parent's permission or the staff member's permission, before they go home. And so before that person leaves, we'll have hopefully a really good idea if they were contagious and not be waiting for 3, 4, 5 days to get a test result back. Now you have to remember, and most of you probably know this, but the rapid tests are not the gold standard. The PCR, the test that you get where it actually is a nasal swab, full nasal swab, is the gold standard. The rapid test does have, I've seen anywhere from up to 30+% false negatives. And there is also a percentage of false positives that can happen. Disenchanting, I know. It would be sad if we send someone home and we told you were positive and then you did a PCR test, they were negative. And I think what we've all learned from all of this year is that this is all uneven. We're not going to know for sure, but at least will give us some idea. And so if we do have a kiddo that tests positive, we will go ahead then and send home any close contacts with them at the same time so we can reduce the chance of spread further in the building. So I think that's a positive. We will only be using this on symptomatic people, not anyone that's like, I just wonder. It's, most of the time they don't really encourage rapid tests to be used for unsymptomatic, only symptomatic. So, we will have them hopefully soon. We've ordered them. I know that the state has verbalized that the snow this past week put a lot of those plans on halt, and they're starting back up again this week, starting to deliver to schools the additional KN95 mask, PPE, as well as these Binax tests. So I'll have Melissa open up the chat in just a minute. Well, go ahead and open up the chat, Melissa, to see what questions people have. I know there were several that joined after we kind of shared this information. So if those people want to stay on, we're most happy to stay on and share anything that you missed. But we wanted you to know, all this additional information and kind of what we're gaining from it and what our plans are going forward. So with that, I'll hear your questions or thoughts or go from there.
Can you review the new mask requirements again?
So more than one layer. So a one layer, for example, gaiter should not be worn on campus. If that was worn before, we were kind of open to the type of masking. We're saying at least 2 layers. And so we encourage you just to go through your mask with your child before they come on campus and make sure that they only bring a mask on campus that's multi-layered. If you need more disposable masks, kind of like the surgical mask, we've got those. And so just reach out to your teacher and they will send them home with them, if you need some until you can get some or whichever. So. You can wear more than, if you have 2 one-layered masks, you can wear 2 one-layered masks. But please make sure that your child can do that well. Sometimes it's really complicated and it's not comfortable to wear 2 masks for all day. I know a lot of the staff are doing that right now, but it's just something to think about.
Based on your communication on 129, families can request a credit of 10 to 75% for days closed due to COVID. At the beginning of this call, you said extended learning cannot open during snow days, and thus the nursery as well due to COVID. I think you might have said snow, but can we request a credit for the 5 snow days that extended learning and nursery were closed?
So the whole credit thing is only for specific families that are enrolled in full day programming and are in the family support program. So because that's not a situation for all the families on this call, I'm happy to stay on and talk to anybody who has questions specifically in that category, but that's a very small group that's on this call. And it's only for those family support program people. So I'll stay on the call if you have more questions about that.
Hi, this is Amy Fouts. I'm in the car, so I can't type my question.
Sure.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
One is, are you accepting donations of homemade 3-layer masks so we can reduce the disposables?
I think if people have homemade masks, sure, we'd be happy to distribute those, and if people need them, get them to homes, of course.
Because I even have some, like, I was surprised how much my kids' faces grew since last April.
Yeah, I bet.
So we even have some, some old other ones that nobody fits in anymore. The second question I have is in regards to hybrid potentially opening in March. I just want to clarify, is that like a full hybrid opening? Because I feel like there have been partial hybrid options, like if families really needed it, or is this that partial hybrid if families need it, or is this full hybrid?
Amy, I don't know why you'd be so confused. This year has been very straightforward. I have no idea what all the questions are about. I'm kidding. So at this point, we're anticipating full hybrid to start on March 8th, but we'll make that final decision on the Wednesday meeting before, which I believe is March 3rd. So, assuming that things are continuing to go down and, all of us on the call are hearing enough about the variants, nobody knows what's going to happen with that. I mean, the recommendations with people that are vaccinated, the hope is things are going to keep going in the direction they're going. As more people get vaccinated and less people are getting infected, that we anticipate having all hybrid in the building on March 8th. But we will see where the numbers are. I'll meet with my staff advisory team before the family meeting, and then we'll give you any update on March 3rd. I think
Thank
Tracy, yeah, sure. Tracy, you have your hand up, Tracy Jones.
Hi, I'm also can't type my question, so can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Here's, as much as I love this school, and I'm just, this whole triple layer, double layer masking thing has me very concerned. Just as my thoughts on this, and like I said, I am no doctor, and I don't mean to start anything, but I'm just really concerned about that, because I know, like, if I wear an N95 mask just to go into, let's say, the grocery store, by the time you leave, you're almost nauseous because of it's just, you're not allowed, it filters your air, and there you don't get much air. And also, my question to you is this, I have been to seminars where we are told that homemade masking is great, but only if it is washed every day. And in order to keep the germ level down, we're to use the disposables, and then that they can be thrown away. So I guess my question, it's really not a question, it's just, I'm just concerned, and it might just be my child, but I'm going to have to figure out a way how to keep my child in a 2-ply mask. And whether that's 2 disposable ones, but are the kiddos right now that are on campus, are they wearing the 2-ply mask, and are they having any issues with, or are the kids just being really resilient little critters and just getting through it?
So thanks, Tracy, for your comments. Just a couple of clarifications. 2-ply doesn't mean 2 masks. The mask that I have on right now is just a cotton mask, but it has 2 layers of fabric on it. And so, and it has a place for me to put a filter in the middle. So these are not N95 masks. These are KN95 masks, which are very different than N95 masks, but they are multi-layer. I don't know how many layers, but they're all very compact. It looks like 1 layer, but there's lots of room to breathe in between. So I get it. It's confusing. You could read a million different beliefs about masking. We're just saying that the 1-layer gaiter, that's just like we got these, I don't have it with me, these staff masks that were just 1 layer. We're not using those by themselves right now. We're just using something that has 2 layers of fabric on it, The surgical masks that you can get at Walgreens those are 3-layer paper masks. So anything like that is fine.
Okay, so he can wear a K95 because that's what we have.
Yep.
And and he would only have to wear one. He wouldn't have
That's
to put
right.
2 on top of
That's
it.
right.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay, I'm sorry for the.
Yep, you're all good.
Okay.
I know it's confusing. Yeah, thanks for the question. I'm sure you're not the only one that was thinking about that.
Barbara, there's a question
a-
about the rapid testing. Is the rapid testing that we refer to only for the staff or also for the learners? And if it's for the learners, is it mandatory if they're symptomatic?
So it's for both. In the spirit of Community Montessori, we don't do many things that are mandatory. This will not be one of them. And so it's your choice. You have to give consent. If your child is under the age of 17, we have to get consent from you. For the rest of this school year, we'll be getting consent by either texting or emailing you a consent form if we are in that situation between now and May. We are also creating a document on the enrollment documents, so that we can use this for next year if needed. And so we'll have the consent form on the enrollment paperwork as well. So it is not mandatory. It will only be used if we're sending your kiddo home for symptoms. If your child is young, if they're 3 or 4, we won't be giving them the test unless you're here with them. And if you say to me, your child's 6 or 7, but you want to be there, we will work that out too. We want this to make kiddos feel safe and secure. It is just a gentle swab in their nasal passage. It's not invasive at all. And like I said, we've had 4 staff that had to go through training. They had to watch videos. They had to take a test before they qualify to give the test. And so we'll have 4 that have gone through all that training and can give the test if you give us the thumbs up to do it. If you want to go get your own test, that is absolutely fine too. It's just another a tool that we've got at our disposal.
Hey, Barbara.
Yes.
Just to give people an idea too, if you know a little anatomy for this test, you don't go beyond the turbinate, which is kind of where your nose starts to narrow in your nostril. There's sort of like a natural stopping point in your nose. So this one specifically says not to go beyond that point, which is not even up into your nasal passage, which, some of these do that. So I just thought we'd clear that up if people had some familiarity with the nose.
Melissa has done the training too. And Indiana is even offering the National Guard to come in and help us with any of this, which is really cool. So, there's a lot of work going into trying to help schools to feel better prepared and supported. And so we're trying to take advantage of all those options too. Any other questions, comments? All right.
Oh, we just had one pop in. So March 8th would mean 3 weeks of hybrid before spring break. In the past, with breaks, holidays, etc., there's an increase in COVID numbers for the 2 to 4 weeks following. Will this be considered?
Thank you for bringing that question up, because that's the thing I forgot to mention. So the CDC is also, you may know, recommending that anyone that travels outside of the United States would quarantine for 7 days upon their arrival back to the United States. We will also be expecting all families that travel outside the United States to quarantine. So if mom or dad goes outside of the United States, that means if the child lives with that mom or dad, that they also quarantine during that 7 days. They suggest that you test between day 3 and 5, but you quarantine either way for 7 days. So I know that wasn't your specific question, Anna, but I do think that is really important. I want to make sure people hear that. And we do know that there will be a break, and we're going to see what on purpose, we chose 3 weeks before that spring break to see how things go. So I would imagine that we're probably going to have another family meeting that week before spring break to see if we'll make any adjustments for the week after spring break. If not only to just remind families of the responsibility if they're traveling or if they come back. I know that we have had members of our community that have gone out of the United States and have come back positive. I'm sure there have also been people that have traveled within the United States and have come back positive. So it's just something we're all going to have to think about. I mean, of course, like what happened over the winter holidays, we don't want to repeat that again. That was a really difficult time. So we're hopeful that our families do not bring anyone on campus that, in any way shows symptoms or could have been exposed.
Yeah, and there was one little clarifying comment about that's rule is for out of the country, but not out of the state. And that is true. That is what the guidance is for. But I think, Barbara, what you're emphasizing is any kind of travel obviously might increase your risk. So you just need to consider that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the quarantine rule is for international.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you all very much for coming on the call. We appreciate it. Like I said, Melissa and I are working on an email that we hope to get out this afternoon that kind of gives you the details of that, the information we discussed today. So thank you again for coming on, and I'll stay on for a couple minutes. Thank you so much. Have a great day.